Do you know who Dean Rutherford is? Find out now.
Hello, good evening, welcome to another episode of Crushed Custard, and today's album is one of my all-time favourites. It's this one, Backstreet Crawler, Second Street, my original pressing, as you can see, I got from the old record and tape exchange. Oh, I say I got it, a mate of mine brought it back for the bloke who was actually the guitar player in my band at the time, or one of the guitar players in my band at the time. It cost a princely sum of £1 for a first pressing of a brilliant album. There's the inside and everything. Really good album this. Looks like originally it was £2.99 from somewhere else before that, so it may even be third hand, but it still sounds absolutely fantastic. There's a CD version of it in the cupboard as well, but let's get on and have a little look at this. Backstreet Crawler. After Free, Kossoff formed a band called Backstreet Crawler, a band that he named after this solo album he'd made a couple of years earlier. Now, they made a pretty decent debut album and then went off on a headlining UK tour. Unfortunately, whilst this tour was on, Kossoff suffered a heart attack and was actually declared clinically dead for 30 minutes, so the rest of the tour had to be cut short. After this, though, things started to pick up just a little bit. John Bundrick came into the band, replacing Mike Montgomery, who'd been the keyboard player on the first album. And Kossoff seemed to regain a little bit of his enthusiasm, and they were off to America now to do some headlining shows, including one at the Starwood Club in Los Angeles, where old mates from Bad Company would come along for a bit of a jam. Everything seemed to signify that Kossoff was on the way back, and optimism was at its highest point for some time. The second album, then Second Street, was recorded in various studios in America during Kossoff's rehabilitation period, and for this reason, Snuffy Walden, who played on the final Free album Heartbreaker and had done a lot of the guitar work on that, was brought in again to add a little bit of guitar here and there when Kossoff was too ill to perform. But he didn't take as much of a lead on this as he had done on the Heartbreaker album. Despite all this, though, it's pretty clear from listening to the album that Kossoff regaining his enthusiasm and that things were definitely on the up. This 9-track album features 4 from the pen of bass player Terry Wilson, not to be confused with the lead vocalist Terry Wilson Slesser, and 4 from keyboard man John Rabbit Bundrick. 2 of them co-written with a chap called Dean Rutherford. More about him a little later on. There was also 1 group composition to make up the 9-track album. So the album gets underway then with Selfish Lover, which is a reasonably fast-paced opener, and the first thing that hits you is that Rabbit Bundrick seems, he does to me anyway, to be a far better fit for this band on the keyboards than Mike Montgomery was, and the whole sound now is much more akin to the sound on the last Free album, Heartbreaker, and the work between the keyboard and the guitar just seems to blend perfectly. The track features lots of flashing solo notes across riffs and vocals alike, which is something that happens throughout the album. The second track is a track called Blue Soul, and that's got a nice gentle acoustic opening with some lovely piano underneath it. Former Beckett man Terry Wilson Slesser, who's not unlike Paul Rodgers in his delivery, belts out a superb soulful vocal which totally complements the melody, and it's absolutely wonderful song. The guitar and the keyboards are working well in unison as ever with Kossoff and Bundrick together, and what in many places could have been seen as just a simple blues track is taken to another level by the ability of these musicians. It's turned into a far more atmospheric piece thanks to the powerful little sections alongside the gentleness of the main part of the song. Of course, the classic weeping guitar from Kossoff gives it its own majesty. Stop What You're Doing is what comes up next. This is the only track on the album which is designated to have been a group composition. It's an energetic and fast-paced with a really funky beat. Really sticks in your head. Bit of a earworm type track with this one, with Kossoff playing some great funky riffs underneath the main body of the song. Kossoff plays it almost as though it's an instrumental, never wasting an opportunity to flash a few notes tastefully across the track. It's almost constant soloing, even behind the vocal, which is rhythmically repetitive, but not to the point of monotony. The back end of the song takes a progression not unlike the Don Nicks track Going Down. A song which, in the hands of many other bands, would have been just a throwaway filler track, is 3 minutes or so of absolute fun. Raging River is another track with an acoustic opening before it builds up into a better than average mid-tempo folk blues track. The first half of the album, though, ends with what for me is the best track on the album, Some Kind of Happy. It is a truly wonderful blues soul song with great backing vocals and a superb lead vocal from the aforementioned Terry Wilson Slessor. The song is packed full of emotion, and as you can imagine, it features more great Kossoff guitar with his Gibson weeping and wailing mournfully in a style not unlike the one that he used on Come Together in the Morning. The song has a great climax, and it's easily my favourite on the album, which is not to say that the rest of the tracks on the album aren't good, because this is a top-class album, and at the moment we're only halfway through it.
Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this episode.
The second half of the album kicks off with a track called Sweet Beauty, another one with a gentle opening before it builds up again into a slightly faster track. It's a really nice vehicle for both Wilson Slessor and Kossoff, and although it's one of the shortest songs on the album, it's far from the least impressive. The bar is set really high on this album, don't forget, and almost every track is a classic in its own right. After that, we get a track called Just For You, which is a moodier, bluesier song featuring a strong riff with some atmospheric organ underneath it, and the drums of Tony Bronigal are very much to the fore here, even more so than on the majority of the album. Bronigal is from the same mould as the Simon Kirke type drummers, simple and effective without being overly flashy. Kossoff, though, flashes some great mini solos in between the verses and during the lyrics. One of Kossoff's many qualities as a guitarist was the fact that he was happy for the vocalist to sing over his soloing. Maybe we should also look at it the other way and say Kossoff was lucky to have vocalists who were happy to let him solo over there singing. But whichever way you look at it, it comes out really good. And there aren't that many bands that can pull it off. There aren't that many guitar players that can pull it off. But Kossoff certainly was one of them. On Your Life comes next. That's a good mid-tempo track, which is even more reminiscent of Heartbreaker Free than the rest of the album, really, with a superb melody, some top-notch rabbit keyboards, and another great vocal from Wilson Slessor. It's in the same vein, really, as Bundrick's best ever composition, Muddy Water, which was on the Heartbreaker album and turned up on a Crawler album a couple of years after this. The best compliment that I can give, though, probably to anybody on this album, is to Terry Wilson Slessor, because although I'm constantly saying that the album reminds me of Free, the songs have got a free feel about them, you don't at any point wish that Paul Rodgers was doing the singing, because Wilson Slessor does such a good job and interacts so well with Rabbit and Kossoff and the rest of the band. Quite why that man hasn't had the stellar career that he should have had is totally beyond me. But the good news is he's still gigging now. He's not only going around with his own band, and he's just made a new CD as well, which I'm hoping maybe to feature on here at some point. He's also fronting the latest version of those great 70s rockers, Geordie. So he's still going strong. And before I forget, we're going a little bit out of order here, the aforementioned Dean Rutherford is actually Terry Wilson Slessor. After I'd initially done a review for this, I don't know, it must have been 10, 15 years ago probably, I wrote a review for this, and Terry Wilson Slessor contacted me, and he said, he commented on it on one of my blogs, and he said, Dean Rutherford's me. He was advised by his manager at the time that if he wrote the song under a different name, he would get a better deal or something. I'm pretty sure that he told me that it didn't actually pan out that way in the end. Back to the album then. Leaves in the Wind is the final track, and that's a faster-wise, jazzier type track, really, with Kossoff and Rabbit both playing some interesting jazz-like runs underneath the vocal, and Rabbit driving the song along with some great keyboard and piano work. Kossoff, of course, as he always does, shines all over the place, and there's a great slow, lingering blues solo or two. It's a great laid-back ending to what is an incredibly good album. Really top-class album. I know I've said that already a couple of times, but it's one of the things that amazes me that this album is still relatively obscure. It's had a couple of re-releases. It was put out on CD. I think it came out as a part of a box set a couple of years ago with the earlier album, but I just don't understand why more people have never really got to listen to this one. It's never really been heralded as the classic album that it is, and it really, really is a tragedy that it was, of course, to be Kossoff's final recording, and so close to the end of his short life was it that it didn't actually get released until after he died, which is even sadder, really. And I just hope that he maybe got to hear some of the final mixes before they actually did come out, because it's a great legacy to him as well, because it proves that he was capable, as we all know he was capable, but he would have been able to make it on his own without Free. I think a lot of people think that a lot of Kossoff's problems came around or maybe got made worse by the fact that when Free split up, that was one of the reasons why they got back together again, wasn't it? To sort of try and help him to get back on an even keel. But I think this album, if you look back at it now, will show you that he would have been capable of making it without Free, with his own band, and he had a top band around him, and those musicians, I'm sure, are all eternally grateful that they got to record with the great Paul Kossoff, because not that many people did, and this album is as an important part of the Kossoff legacy as any of the Free albums is. So if you've not heard it, go out and get a listen to it. Really, you should, because it is fantastic. It's a really, really good album. Shouldn't be too difficult to pick up, and I guarantee to you, you won't be disappointed.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please like and subscribe as it helps the channel to grow. See you soon.